In this podcast, we will discuss the process, methodologies, and challenges that we face while creating our main podcast. Our project began with a reading of Frank Felsenstein and James Connolly's What Middletown Read, which provided us the basis for our project, as their research was provided valuable information on Muncie, Indiana's history and development in the gas boom era. However, their study provided little detail on the movements and lives of both immigrants and migrants in Muncie. The absence of this historical information led to our interest in studying the foreign-born population of the city. We began researching secondary source materials in the Ball State archives and special collections in order to analyze immigration and migration to Muncie, Indiana, but we quickly discovered that this was much too broad of a topic to tackle. We decided to narrow our topic to African American migration and European immigration with a focus on the Irish. The reason we chose these two specific groups of minorities is because the African Americans were the largest group of non-white migrants that migrated to Muncie, Indiana, and the Irish because they were such a small but significant minority group outlined by Felsenstein and Connolly.
This in turn faced us with many challenges because the Irish were such a small group of lesser-known immigrants. When looking for information in the archives, we found very few sources in general on Irish immigrants, and the few that we found happened to be student studies, so they were unusable as sources to support our research, which left us without a source for the Irish. This then made us have to look into other areas to get information on the Irish. Online sources such as journal articles from the JSTOR database, which turned out to be a great source for information. Another challenge when looking at Irish immigrants was that when we did find usable sources to support our research, they mentioned the Irish, but they did not go into great detail, and they were not any that we found that gave first-hand accounts of an Irish immigrant that was living in Muncie, Indiana during the time period that our project pertains to. There was also no oral histories when looking at Irish immigrants, while some sources that we found on Irish immigrants was not usable because they just briefly touched on the group but did not give any useful information that would support our research. When looking for information on African American migrants, it brought us similar challenges that we face when researching the Irish. We could not find any personal written experiences such as diaries or first-hand accounts of an African American migrant from this time period. We did find oral histories for this group of minorities, but their focus and magnitude made them difficult to go through with the limited amount of time that we had to do our project, so it did not benefit us in the long run. We did, however, overcome these challenges. Even though it was hard to find information on both the African American migrants and Irish immigrants, we found good sources for both, and once we analyzed these sources, it made our work much easier. The primary sources were the biggest help because they were largely census records for Delaware County, and that gave us the exact number of minority residents of each group that lived there, in addition to their occupations. This also gave us a small look into their everyday life and what the common person of their group did. For the Irish, Ancestry.com was very useful because it gave us the tools to find an Irish man and woman who were immigrants from Ireland and then later moved to Muncie, Indiana, and both held very common jobs for Irish immigrants to help support our research.
The secondary sources that we found helped support our research more than we expected them to. We thought that primary sources would be the most influential pieces of evidence to help push and support our research and the final outcome for our project. Our secondary sources gave us enough information to work with for both the Irish immigrants and African American migrants. Journal articles such as Blockers and Dolan's gave us the most information of each of these groups. Felsenstein and Connolly's What Middletown Read, which was the basis of our research, also played a pivotal role in our project as it gave us the groundwork and basis for our entire project, and the talk and the scope of immigration and migration in the book is what inspired us to choose this as our project.
Overall, the project was an interesting and fun but challenging thing to work on. It gave us great insight into what real historians do, and it gave us the experience of doing real historical research and a look into the future for what we may have to do for other history courses and possibly our careers.